Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Gossip Finance, where I am your host, Alacius Inger.
And I'm Duncan Sandlin. How's everybody today? How are you, Lacey?
Excellent. I can't wait to talk about the news today. There's always more craziness and those Republicans.
Oh yeah, good stuff. Well, I wanted to do this first. So the stocks had kind of a bad week the last week. It's gotten a little bit better today, but the kind of the anticipation about why it happened and all that, people kind of saw it coming. But here's a guy named Eric Johnston, and he's on CNBC, and he's got kind of an interesting take where he's trying to spin this in a specific way, and I don't know how well it works, but we're gonna go ahead and just look at him real quick.
Is in the eye of the storm today. Just what's your broad view on what we're witnessing?
Yeah, so I think the big story here is what's going on in the rates market. And the reason why it's important is that today, inflation break-evens are actually lower, meaning the market thinks the outlook for inflation is actually lower. And there's been very little change in Fed expectations. So the entire move higher in yield is all real yields moving higher. And they're moving higher because of this deficit and debt issue that we had.
So I want to clarify this real quick. So the yield situation, the bond yields is basically the interest rate on the bond. So they've been going up, and he's got a weird take about why they're going up, and then we'll kind of break that down. But he's saying it's because of the deficit and the debt.
So the market has and the economy has absolutely benefited from the deficit. We've talked about this for a long time. We're running a $2 trillion deficit, and that has been a stimulus. But if it was that easy just to run a large stimulus and, of course, or a large deficit, there's obviously a downside, and we're starting to finally see that downside. And that's what's happening with yields moving higher. So, you're seeing it across sectors, and, we've seen the financial situation show up back in February, March. We've now seen the utility situation show up as of last week. And
so anyway, we'll cut him off there. But this is where I think that's interesting, is because so he's saying it's just a weird argument. So yields are high, and that's somehow negatively affecting the stock market. But yields have been high for over a year now. And they've been going up for over a year. In fact, things like in the housing market, it's now 7% is the interest rate to buy a new house. It's going to probably go up to 8%. But it hasn't slowed down people buying houses that much. I mean, sales have gone down some, but the net profit is still up. So it's kind of a weird argument to say, okay, well, it's the debt and the deficit. Well, what happened with the debt and the deficit recently that would cause the stock market to all of a sudden everybody to back off? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, I don't know what you think, Lace, but I just thought that was a weird argument on that. And I think what he's doing is, kind of typical for CNBC, but it's the conservative argument that we need to reduce spending, and that'll help the market out. That'll help out the economy. Well, the problem with that is whenever they say this, like, oh, it's the debt or the deficit or reduce spending, what they're really talking about is cut food stamps, cut education, cut Social Security, cut healthcare. That's what they're talking about. Because it's funny.
Well, of course, none of them actually directly ever want to say that. No, they never actually want to say, here's the laundry list of things we want to cut.
Right.
they're gonna just blow a big poof of smoke out there and be like, we're magically cutting things.
Right. Well, that's you nailed it, because if you ask like Americans, does the government overspend? Like 60% of Americans go, yeah, the government overspends. But then if you start listing the things that we can, that they want to cut, then Americans start going, well, no, we shouldn't be cutting Medicare. No, we shouldn't cut Social Security. No, we shouldn't cut.
I mean, let's be honest, it's not that different from when people are going to try to cut from their own personal budgets, right? Like, oh yeah, totally
Yeah.
spend too much money. Okay, so which of these categories are you going to cut? And they're like, well, I mean, like I can't cut that, and can't cut that, and can't cut that. You know,
Right.
So there's just people are, they want to say one thing, but then when it gets down to brass tacks, they're like, I don't actually want any of this to go. You know,
Right.
And you don't have to think that, but.
Right. It's one thing to ask the broad question, am I overspending? Yeah. Does the government overspend? Well, I feel it does. Right. I don't think so, but 60% of Americans do. But then it's like you said, once you get down to the nuts and bolts, people are like, well, wait a second. You're taking what away from me?
I don't want to cut food.
Right.
Well, I don't want to cut security. I don't want to cut healthcare. I don't want to cut.
Yeah. But that's what's going on, and it's kind of a weird thing too with the government shutdown recently that was just narrowly averted, and we'll get into that more later. But he's almost arguing that we should have shut down the government and made all these cuts that the Republicans proposed. My favorite was cutting 80% of funding to underfunded schools or underprivileged schools. So we're going to cut 80% of federal funding to the poorest schools in America. I mean, it's literally, let's take away the poor kid's top ramen so the rich kid can, afford his prime rib. It's like, I mean, it's just the weirdest, but it is.
The funny thing with people's idea that the government is spending too much and they should just cut all of this stuff. It's kind of easy for them to say it blindly, not really considering what areas they're going to cut to, because they very easily feel like those cuts are going to affect somebody else, not me. That's I think there's this idea that it's like that it's different than my personal budget. It's not like you're cutting my food. You're going to cut other people's whatever. First of all, they don't know what it is. Second of all, they don't think it impacts them directly. I think so they'll blindly go with it.
Well, I think the other part of it too is a lot of conservatives they're kind of evil, not in the sense that they're willful. I mean, they think what they're doing is right, but they think, well, if we cut it from them, then they'll learn to take care of themselves. But if we give them a benefit, then they'll just rely on the benefit forever. Right. That's sort of their mentality, when the reality is no, if you teach them how to fish, they'll take care of themselves. But if you cut all their funding and they never learn to do anything, then they're kind of worthless, which is the other side of the coin, right? Which is my argument, which is no, you have to fund all this stuff. Otherwise, you have a much more crippled society. Right. But that's the thing. And I think he's trying to spin it that way. He's wrong, by the way, everybody. Just to make it blatantly clear.
Wait, we're not agreeing? We're not agreeing with him?
I'm not agreeing with him. That's
okay.
I'm agreeing the stock market went down and yields are high. But there's a reason yields are high. It's because the Fed has raised rates for the last year. And rates are higher than they've been in 20 years. And then what happened last week was the Fed, not last week, a few weeks ago, the Fed said, we're going to keep the rates higher for longer. We probably won't raise them. We might, but they're probably not going to start going down until sometime next year. And so this higher for longer thing spooked the market because it means everything's going to be more expensive. Getting loans is going to be more expensive, which hurts businesses' ability to expand and do research and all kinds of other stuff. So that was part of it. And then what happened was there's a jobs report coming out soon, but the sort of the front end of the jobs report was a lot more jobs were created than we anticipated in the last month in August, right? Well, if that's the case, then that means that it's tight in the labor market. There are more and more jobs than there are people to fill them, which means now employers have to compete for labor. So they have to start paying people what they're worth. They can't underpay people because people are desperately looking for work. Because if there's lots of jobs, I could always go find another job if you're not going to pay me.
Right.
If there are not a lot of other jobs, I got to take what's just there if I want to make any money and survive. So that's what's going on. And that's just a Yahoo article that I found from Bloomberg. But that's what's going on here. So just in this article, investors find little reason to buy stocks as rate fears spread. And then it goes down to this, S&P 500 plunged to its lowest level since Tuesday. Blah, blah, blah. The turbulence was sparked by a surprising increase in U.S. job openings, something Jerome Powell has been watching as the Federal Reserve tries to tame stubbornly high inflation. Well, the guy mentioned at the beginning of the video, inflation's still going down. So the Fed's not actually taming inflation. They're just trying to squeeze the job market. That's the only thing they're trying to do. And they think by squeezing the job market, then that'll slow the economy and that'll tame inflation. Well, the job market's still expanding. The economy's, still doing really, really well and still growing really rapidly. But inflation is going down. Right? So the Fed can't say that they had anything to do with that. But now that jobs are opening up, they're going to say, well, look, that's going to speed up the economy, so we need to raise rates. And that's what everybody panicked over. Because if the Fed raises rates again, it's going to make things even more difficult. So that's all that it was. But I love how he goes on CNBC and it's the debt and the deficit. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what does the debt and the deficit have to do with the stock market? Ever? Does the average investor, do the big banks, do they care if the government's $25 trillion or $30 trillion in debt or whatever it is?
Right.
Do they care? Have they ever cared before? Did they care when Trump ran it up by almost $8 trillion? Did anybody blink an eye? Did that affect? No, the stock market did really well up until COVID.
Right.
So I don't know.
Absolutely, in the loosest sense of the term, the only thing that I can think of is, if there's some sort of movement on that suddenly makes people's confidence change in a huge way. But I don't see any sudden big enough movements happening that would change people's perspective in a large enough way to have an actual impact, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's a boogeyman. It's not real. But ghouls like this guy are real that believe that. And then what do? They want to hurt as many poor people as possible to try and fix it. Which is what makes them sort of evil. They don't realize it. I believe that, honestly, Hitler thought he was doing the right thing. I'm sure he didn't get up every morning and go, wow, I am one twisted motherfucker. No, I'm sure he got up every morning and said, yeah, let's kill all the Jews. Good job. Yay me.
Which is such a weird thing to say.
No, I know.
But the truth is, I agree with you. I think many times when people do these hugely damaging things, they somehow have this idea in their mind that they're doing something for the greater good.
Right. Whatever that might be in their
mind. That might be.
The greater good in their mind might be something horrible. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. Anyway, if a guy tells you, like that guy said, hey, this is causing this just because, which is basically what he said, then you need to start and go, wait, why? How is that causing that? You got to draw a line for me. Because I can't just take your word at just because. Right? No, there's a reason. So we'll get into something more fun now. I just thought that was interesting because I saw that clip on the news. But more interesting stuff. Donald Trump in court. Fun. So this is the hearing.
Till Daddy took the T-bird away.
Yep. So this is the hearing about the him inflating the prices of the values of his business and then deflating it for the IRS. And so it's been going on, but it's just been pandemonium in the courtroom the last few days. Today's Thursday. He wasn't there today, but he did some stupid stuff this morning. Anyway.
Oh, no.
So the first day.
What happened while I was at work? What did he do?
I'll tell you guys in a minute. Let me just go through this in chronological order. You can take the journey with me. So the first day, some stuff went on. One of his attorneys, Alina Habba, who's the one who's going on the press a lot, she got caught lying in court and got reprimanded by the judge. And now the New York State Bar is talking about pulling her license. So she might lose her career because she was lying in court perjuring herself in court on the first day live on national television, right? With the press there. And so that was stupid. Then, of
You
course,
just can't make this stuff up.
no. And then, of course, at the end of the day, right before the judge recessed for the day, they had one of the accountants on there, and the accountant was bringing up a tax return or something like that from like 2011. And the judge said, well, let's put a pin in that. I'm willing to entertain the idea that this evidence might be too old, right? Well, Trump's lawyer, Habba, took that to mean, oh, the judge, because the judge made a ruling the previous week and said, hey, no, all these claims are valid and all these claims are true. He did inflate the prices. He's guilty of all that. The judge made a ruling right out of the gate. There's no debate on that. We're debating how culpable he was. That's all we're debating right now, right? That's all we're doing for court. Well, Trump's attorney apparently told Trump, this is probably this woman, Habba, no, that means he's throwing out 80% of the charges because he won't go back before 2014 because the statute of limitations, and there was an appellate ruling that actually wasn't a ruling. The appellate court just deferred it to this court, right? So she goes on Fox News to say, hey, the judge said he's throwing out the evidence from 2011, so he's throwing out 80% of the trial. So this is her on Fox and Friends First. And you know it's really good stuff if it's on Fox and Friends.
Oh my
Former
goodness.
President Trump headed back into a New York City courtroom
So
today.
this is the attorney, Alina Habba, on the right for everybody. So you can...
So notice
calling-
there's one happy-ish looking attorney, and then there's the look on her face.
Yeah, well, she looks pissed. He's like, this guy got paid up front, though. He wouldn't do this case until the money cleared in his account.
You know what? I actually kind of can't blame him.
Well, Trump doesn't pay his
You know?
lawyers. Rudy's in deep crap right now because he can't afford to pay his lawyers, and he's broke because Trump never paid him for anything. You know,
Oh my
Rudy
God.
Giuliani. So this guy, I don't think this guy cares all that much because I think he's like, I got paid. So I think to him it's all kind of a joke. He knows it's a loser. I mean, you might as well have fun. Anyway, so we'll watch
A
this.
successful first day. Quote, good day at trial today as the judge will be honoring the appellate court's unanimous decision on the statute of limitations. This reduces the case by approximately 80%. See you in court on Tuesday morning.
Donald Trump's attorney, Alina Habba, joins us on set now. Alina, good morning to you. Back in court today. But first, let's talk about this decision by the judge yesterday. The former president left in a very good mood, saying that 80%...
No, I didn't catch that before. So she's doing court like in an hour. But she took the time to run over to Fox and Friends to talk shit. I don't know. I think
Oh my goodness.
I'd be in court getting prepped.
of the case is now essentially dismissed. Is that true? And tell us the impact of this. This all has to do with statute of limitations.
That's right. So remember, originally we had a decision that came down from the appellate division in June, which dismissed Ivanka Trump. And in that same decision, they also addressed the fact that there's statute of limitations and there's limitations on years that they can go back. Well, that affects the value of the case that they're bringing against them, which, by the way, the case should be entirely dismissed. That's obviously our position. This judge did not acknowledge it until yesterday when he said, you just spent the entire day wasting my time effectively. 2011 was what we looked at. That is way before, and that is the appellate decision, or the appellate division already decided that. So it was great. I'm really happy that he acknowledged it. It was a good step in the right direction.
Okay. So she's saying Trump's right. They threw out 80% of the case. Woohoo! Good for us, right? Hour later or so, she's in court. Judge is like, let me make this clear. I did not throw out anything. My ruling from last week still stands. He's still guilty of all this stuff. It's still admissible. What I was talking about is the evidence that this guy's presenting relevant? And there's no statute of limitations on evidence. He's like, but I didn't rule that I'm forgiving anything. He's still guilty of all this shit. So she goes on, says, oh, see, we got it thrown out. Then an hour later, she goes to court. The judge is like, okay, let me make this clear. No. That's how incompetent these people are. It just kills me. So then what happened on Tuesday right after that was Trump was talking shit about the judge's court clerk, saying she's having an affair with Chuck Schumer, who's in the Senate, right? Because Trump found a picture of her with a bunch of people, and Chuck Schumer was in the picture. And she met Chuck Schumer once. She doesn't, and so now she's starting getting the threats and stuff from Trump supporters. So the judge put a gag order on Trump, which I think was pretty light, but still, and basically told him, no, you can't be doing this stuff anymore, blah, 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 right? Well, that brings us to today, Thursday. Trump wasn't in court. He caught a plane back to Florida, but sometime this morning, he found the time to go onto his Truth Social, his little website, right, his version of Twitter, to tweet out, somebody should do something about this judge. Somebody should take care of this judge. He called the judge a racist and all this other shit. So he gets a gag order on Tuesday. Thursday, he's already broken it. And of course, he breaks it while he's flying back to Florida. But
he has just got to stop posting crap.
No, he's not gonna. He's gonna push him until they finally throw him in jail. Because right now the problem is that it looks bad for the entire judicial system, because now it's like, well, yeah, had this been you or me or somebody else, anybody else, we'd be in jail right now. Right? We'd have been found, in contempt of court.
Guilty 7 ways to Sunday.
And if you threaten the judge and you threaten the judge clerk, I bet you we don't get a hearing till Monday. So we'd spend all weekend in the tombs. But nope, because it's Trump. Oh, I'm going to give you a gag order. Don't do it again. And he does it again. It's like, well, now what are you going to do, judge? Because he's basically daring you. He's basically saying you don't have the fucking balls.
It sort of feels like, he's trying to steal the damn base and being like, can you catch me? Can you catch me?
Yeah. Well, the thing about it is, I think the judges are worried that because it'll go Fox News and all the Republicans will be like, oh, it's political imprisonment, da 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 da, and they'll make a big deal out of it and try and send it up to a higher court and all this crap. And I think the judges are afraid that that'll happen. The Supreme Court will have to take it on or something. And the Supreme Court's already corrupt. So, I don't know.
Corrupt and stacked.
Yeah. Anyway, what was the... here we go. Oh. So here was the thing I think that was most funny. Trump, it's a judge trial, but they wanted a jury trial, and that was a big thing. Why didn't they get a jury trial? Well, here we go. Here's CBS News, and... what was it? Their correspondent here is going to tell you why Trump did not get a jury trial, why he got a judge trial.
There is no jury in this case, why it's just before a judge, why that's the case, and how that will affect the proceedings in an eventual ruling.
John, always great to be with you. This is an unusual legal circumstance for former President Donald Trump. He's not facing a jury trial. Instead, it's a civil lawsuit trial, and he's being sued by the Attorney General of New York. But the Attorney General is making statements through her lawyers today. That Office of the Attorney General has a case against Trump that he defrauded people for years by making these valuations of his company. But ultimately, it's the judge in this case who is going to have final say. And in part, this is because the judge said today in the courtroom, and I was sitting just steps away when he said it, the Trump lawyers didn't request a jury trial in this civil.
So that's what happened. They forgot to check the box that said we want a jury trial. Can you believe it? And guess whose fault it is? She's right here being told by the judge, you didn't request a jury trial. That's why he's kind of trying to try not to chuckle, like, "Oh God, what a fucking shit show!"
And you know what? You take a look at the look on this other lawyer's face here, and
Habba.
He's just like,
"Oh, this guy."
Thank God I got paid up
front. Yeah, I was smart.
because this is just like, he knew it was going to be a shit show already.
Oh,
and then like the shit just got even stupider on ridiculous technicalities that should not have been an issue.
Well, this frame is worth 1,000. This is a photo worth 1,000 words, right? Because not only is she rolling her eyes because she realized she just fucked up and she just got humiliated in court, right? This guy's sitting there looking at the camera like, oh God, here we go. Day one and already, right? We're 10 minutes in.
He kind of looks, I mean, he's sort of half nervously smiling, but he kind of looks like he's like not breathing and holding his breath.
He's like, oh God,
that face you make when you're legitimately not breathing.
He's probably also thinking, I should ask for double the fee. The other thing that's beautiful about this is the woman right here behind him who's leaning forward in her seat. That's Letitia James. That's the Attorney General.
Yep, I know her.
And she's leaning forward because she's like, what? What did the judges say? No fucking way. Because he'd have a better shot at a jury trial because it's a lot of technical information. He has a better shot that somebody doesn't understand it, or he has a Trump supporter in there that, rules in his favor.
Right.
In a judge trial.
Well, just like with this whole slew of people, you definitely have way stronger odds that a good number of them are just not going to understand all of it,
As opposed to a judge who hears these types of cases all the time. This judge understands accounting. He knows how, he understands GAAP and how all that stuff works. So this judge is going to understand everything that's going on, and he's going to make the sole ruling on his own. So, I mean, he's cooked. I mean, he was cooked before, but this is like really bad. Anyway. So his lawyers just get stupider and stupider. This is what happens when you don't pay professionals who work for you. We become less motivated. Or we're like, we'll do it, but double the fee up front. I know I do that. If I think somebody's really annoying and they want to hire me, I don't really do it anymore. But when I was desperate, it's like, I'll do it. It's like, yeah, I'll do it, but I'm going to charge you double what I normally charge. And people, why is it so high? It's an annoyance tax. That's what it is.
I say pain in the ass tax.
If I have to listen to your ass, I'm getting paid more. Well,
listen, even when you've hired somebody, you need to treat the person you've hired with the respect you want to be treated with, because otherwise they, hopefully based on their integrity, they won't screw up your whatever. But, they might want to charge you double. They might just quit on you.
They'll do the absolute
that.
Minimum. Anyway, we'll move on from this the Biden impeachment thing, right? What's he being impeached for? Maybe some bribery stuff. We don't know. We don't know yet. We're not sure. One day we'll find out, maybe, if any. But go ahead. But if you want,
you know what? When I think about this, I just think about one of my favorite little emojis in texting. The one that's just like, I don't know.
I don't know.
What are we impeaching him about?
Don't really know. But if you want to ask, do certain people in this country believe we should have a two-tier justice system or a hierarchy where some people get special treatment and other people don't? Well, yeah, they're called conservatives, and here's the majority report with the evidence. So this is in one of the hearings in the House. And a Democrat asked a question. They're going to talk about it.
Kassar clip. This looks like it might be kind of funny. I have Kassar. Will members of the House Oversight Committee raise their hands if you believe both Hunter and Trump should be held accountable for any indictments if convicted? And we'll see who raises their hands here.
Who raised their hand? Who didn't? Here we go.
Can everyone on the Oversight Committee say the same thing? Will members of the Oversight Committee please raise your hand if you believe both Hunter and Trump should be held accountable for any of the indictments against them if convicted by a jury of their peers? We can take a minute. No, it's this is a serious matter. If y'all need to think about it, we can take a moment and think about it. It is serious. This is very serious.
Can you pause it?
So there you have it. The Republicans do not think Trump should be held accountable. Oh, hang on. What's going on? Little technical problems. All right. Yeah, none of them raised their hand. Oh, if Hunter's guilty, yeah, absolutely.
See, that's
Trump?
a super
Oh,
funny
no.
question. How many people here believe that both Trump and Hunter Biden should be held accountable for their crimes if convicted by a jury of their peers? And the Republicans like, both of them, huh?
No,
not both of them.
One of them. Yeah, the one we don't like.
But like, not both of them.
But you know what's funny?
Oh, and man, right there, front and center, our favorite lady.
Oh, Marjorie Greene, yeah.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jewish space laser green. Anyway, no, the thing about it is it's such, the way he phrased it is great too, but it's such as it just gives you a sense of conservatives. They really do believe that some people are just shit and don't deserve rights. They really believe that, because he literally asked them, do you believe in equal treatment under the law that this country was founded on?
And they're like, no.
Yeah.
Literally no.
We literally fought a revolution against a king to basically say that no, even if you're king, you can be convicted and do time. I mean, that was a big part of the revolution. That was a big part of the whole Constitution and the Continental Congress was everybody equal treatment under the law. But granted, we've never really done it, you know, because they didn't get rid of slavery. So, and women did get equal treatment to the late 70s. And even then,
I don't know.
That's debatable.
We're still working on it.
Yeah. Go watch the Barbie movie. They cover it pretty well. But,
yeah, I was going to say when we get paid the same, then maybe we'll
talk.
Maybe we'll think that we've achieved that. Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah. The fact that you have to ask for it already tells you there's a problem. Anyway, so continuing on with this hearing. So here's AOC, and a Republican points out a text message where Biden says something about Joe Biden, the president, says something about a deal or something like that. And he's like, see, he's taking bribes for policy or something, right? Well, here's AOC after the guy does this to explain what's really going on.
That screenshot of what appeared to be a text message was a fabricated image. It was a fabricated image. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if it was the staff of the committee, but it was not the actual direct screenshot from that phone. And in fact, I would like to submit to the committee the actual full context from the Ziegler affidavit number 1, exhibit 402, of the full text of that exchange. Do I have permission from the chair? This is an embarrassment to the time and people of this country. And I would ask that the chair and I would ask that this committee elevate to the promise of our duties here and comport ourselves with the consistency and practice that is required of our seats and our duty and our oath to our responsibilities here. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Yeah, but she's right. He fabricated evidence. Took it out of context. They actually altered the text, the image of the text, to make it sound. I mean, he literally took things that were 2 things apart. You can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can take anything out of context. In fact, we could joke about, like, I just said kill all the Jews earlier, and yay for me, right?
Next thing you know,
don't take that out
image of you with a little mustache.
Right. The swastika tattooed on my forehead like in Charles Manson. But yeah, I mean, you can't take things out of context like that. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just been a shit show. They got nothing. They're fabricating evidence. The evidence they do have, the witnesses they have all said, no, nothing happened. And they won't do any of those publicly because they know the witnesses are going to say nothing happened. and they'd look really stupid on national television. And furthermore, talking about looking stupid on national television, here's a clip from the David Packwood show that we stole, and he's going to talk about, I think it's, I forget this woman's name, Grace, Representative Grace, but she really drops the ball.
Courageously for the evidence against Joe Biden. Never mind that he's been in public life for 50 years, and they just can't seem to find the evidence. And unfortunately for Congresswoman Nancy Mace, why does it always happen to Nancy Mace? She just can't cite even a shred of an iota, of a kernel, of a crumb, of a seed of evidence. The latest line of questioning from Fox News' Maria Bartiromo, to her credit, it's a good question. You claim that Joe Biden corruptly made policy decisions for profit, either for his own profit or for Hunter Biden's profit. Can you name one such decision for which he profited, from which he profited? And Nancy Mace is like, no, I haven't had time to research that. Really? Because you're going pretty high and fast here on an impeachment inquiry because you're convinced that the evidence is there. You haven't had time? Listen to this.
Have you been able to identify specific policy decisions that Joe Biden made that he was paid for?
Right.
I have not had the ability to research that. I've been looking more at the LLCs, the bank records, all of the lies that Joe Biden has told, and what evidence we have so far in meetings, dinners, appointments.
Yeah. If lies were an impeachable offense, imagine that.
White House records, et cetera, phone messages, text messages, emails, et cetera, connecting the dots with Joe Biden.
And now she's just gish galloping bullshit. I mean, well,
oh my goodness.
I know, it's all horseshit. But that's the thing is, it's like, did you see any evidence of him taking a bribe? After she's accusing him of taking a bribe. Well, I haven't researched that. Wait a minute. You just accused him of it. You didn't research it? You've had 3 years almost. You guys have been doing this shit, trying to impeach him. For nothing. You've got 12,000 documents.
Well, there's like this bait and switch sort of thing she's trying to do because she's like, oh, but I've been so buried under all of his lies that I haven't had time to research the thing I'm actually accusing him of.
Right. It's like, you guys have shown.
Are you kidding me?
You guys have shown Hunter Biden nude pics on the fucking House floor. I mean, of him doing coke and banging hookers, and I'm like, and that makes him less cool? I don't know how that works. You know, I didn't actually see the photos, but apparently Hunter's packing. Apparently he's a big boy.
Really?
That's what I heard. It's not tiny. It's like porno.
Well, I mean,
like porno
big. Good for him.
Good for him. Good for him. Like, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, when she showed those photos, I think she just likes having those. I bet she's got them in the top drawer of her desk. She's like, "Oh, you're a bad boy.
Maybe.
You're a bad boy, Hunter." Oh man. Anyway, the whole impeachment thing is a big nonsense nothing burger. They haven't impeached him. You have to have a vote to impeach. You have to have a vote to have an impeachment inquiry. They didn't have a vote for that. This is just Go ahead.
The whole point, honestly, is just so that when the election time is actually here and you know, the more hardcore campaigning is really underway,
right? They
can be like, oh yeah, Trump was, you know, has all of these court things. Oh yeah, well, I mean, Biden's been impeached. So they can say that, banking partially on the idea that people sort of know that word, but many people don't know much of what is behind that, like what that really means or requires in a technical sense. So they just hear that word, and if people throw around that somebody was impeached, they go, oh, okay, and they you know, take it to mean a particular thing without realizing people are just throwing crap around.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's bullshit. And a lot of it is like you said, it's because of that, Trump's putting pressure on him. And then this leads to the big historical moment of the week that we have to cover. Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, second in line to the president, So if the president dies and the vice president dies, Kevin McCarthy would be president of the United States. So it's a high position. You're number 3 in the United States, right? But he was a really weak speaker, and you could talk more about that in a bit and kind of what he gave up. But the thing that I think is funny about it is McCarthy did this impeachment nonsense on his own. I mean, no vote, nothing. He just did it on his own, basically to satisfy Trump. And then what happened was with the government shutdown thing, he was about to get hosed, and they were going to shut down the government. So you wouldn't be flying an airplane, Social Security checks wouldn't be going out, Medicaid wouldn't be getting paid, Medicare wouldn't be getting paid. It would have been horrible to have a government shutdown, right? He barely avoided that. The Democrats bought him 45 days. That pissed off his constituents, and they ousted him from office. So we're going to watch a real quick clip of that on the ABC News special report. Special report. Dun, dun, dun.
This is an ABC News special report. Now reporting, David Muir.
Good afternoon. We're coming on the air for this high-stakes showdown unfolding on Capitol Hill at this very moment. For the first time in American history, House lawmakers have voted now to remove the Speaker. Speaker Kevin McCarthy forced to surrender the gavel following a rebellion led by members of his own party, led by Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz in particular. Hardline Republicans furious at him for making a deal with Democrats and moderate Republicans to avert a government shutdown, essentially upset with him that he kept the government open. Speaker McCarthy could only afford to lose 4 Republicans. He lost many more. He would have needed help from Democrats as well to stay in power. But Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries making it clear today that this fight was between McCarthy and House Republicans, Democrats en masse voting against him as well.
So there it was. For the first time in U.S. history, they ousted the Speaker with a no confidence vote. Or a motion to vacate, I think is what it's called. But yeah, first time it's ever happened. The 3rd most powerful person in the country. He wasn't that powerful. He gave up all his power.
He gave up all of his power really in the manner in which he got the position. Mm-hmm. He was so desperate for the position, he was willing to take a deal where he could basically be ousted at any moment in time.
Right.
I mean, think about it in like, just any regular person starting a job terms. I know, most of us could be fired at any point in time, but would you truly go and accept a job and be able to perform it well and with confidence if basically when you walked in, they were like, by the way, we're totally going to fire you.
Right. Well, it's even worse than that.
And because they basically told him straight up. They're like, I mean, if somebody's saying to you, you can only take this if you promise to let us, just can you whenever we feel like it, they're telling you they're going to do that.
No, we talked about that back when, because it took 15 votes just to get him as the Speaker, which had never happened before either. So he's made history twice now as Speaker. Right.
Both in ways you don't want to make history.
Right. Both in embarrassing ways. And the thing about it, we talked about it when it happened. It's worse than the scenario you're doing, because that's like you're applying for the job. They don't want to hire you. And then you tell them, well, look, at any time you could fire me for any reason if anybody here is unhappy. And he was actually really stupid about this. But let's watch this clip here, and we'll get into this kind of what happened, because he basically did this to himself in a lot of ways. He basically asked for it. So here's Marnie Hughes on News
Speaker
Nation.
Kevin McCarthy may be in jeopardy. Representative Matt Gaetz from Florida claims that he does have enough votes to oust the Speaker from his leadership role. The vote to vacate could come as soon as today, in fact, possibly in the next few hours. Joining me now, News Nation Washington Bureau Chief Mike Vaquera. Mike, good morning to you. I guess afternoon in D.C. Does Gaetz have the votes he says he has?
Well, it remains to be seen. He says he has it, and it's going to be a very near thing, Marnie. There's no question about it. Here we go. This is going to be an historic day, potentially here in Washington. A speaker has not been removed like this from office in 113 years, Marty. And why is Kevin McCarthy facing this insurrection within his own party in the House of Representatives? Because you remember last week when the Congress voted at the last minute on Saturday night to keep the government open, McCarthy, as Speaker of the House, relied on the help of Democrats to get him across the finish line. Some 90 Republicans voted against him, and this is the upshot. Remember, McCarthy at the beginning of the year, Marty, had 15 votes that were required in the full House before he was able to get enough votes to become Speaker of the House. And part of the price that he paid was any single member. He made this agreement with conservatives in the Freedom Caucus like Matt Gaetz. Any single member could make a motion at any time, one member, to remove him from the Speaker's chair, take that Speaker's gap.
Which was his first big mistake, right? Because usually you have to have like a majority vote to remove him.
Right.
But then he made it to, nope, just one person. That's all you need. One person to be pissed at me for any reason. And out of 200 and whatever, what is it, 20-something people, you're going to piss somebody off.
What are the odds that somebody's not pissed at you?
Yeah.
You know?
The odds that somebody isn't hate you right now is kind of stupid. But anyway, so his whole thing was, so this is kind of what happens though, is when you cripple your, like, the Republicans are the majority in the House. It's the only branch of the government, other than debatably the Supreme Court, that they have any sort of control. Because the Democrats have the Senate and the presidency, right? So they have the House, but they barely have it. They have it by about 4 votes, like he said. That's all they needed, right? So McCarthy basically made the calculation of, look, the Democrats aren't going to want to cause all this upheaval and all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. And normally you would get 48 hours for him to try and secure votes, right? But he waived that, thinking, oh, well, as long as I get at least a few Democrats and I don't give them time to get together and organize, they'll all vote in my favor. That's what he thought.
Why would he think that?
Because Democrats typically are trying to keep the status quo. That's one of the things. And the thing about the government shutdown, I mean, they bailed him out on that. That was a Democratic bill. Almost no Republicans voted for that. That was all Democrats that kept the government from shutting down. And then after they did that, and he took credit for it, even though he didn't do shit. And then he went on news the very next day and said, hey, the Democrats are the ones trying to shut down the government, when the Democrats are the ones who voted for it and wrote it. And the Republicans didn't. So he went and lied on national television to try and... So he's lied and thrown them under the bus a couple times, where he'll make a promise and then break it, right? But that's the problem is he has no power in the Republican Party. He's got the crazy Trump wing of the party, right, which is like half of them. And he's got to placate both sides, so he has no power. So if he wants to get anything done, he has to go to the Democrats. Right? So he tried to pull a House of Cards shit here where he was like, hey, if I waive my 48 hours, the Democrats won't have time to get together and talk, and I'll at least get 5 or 6 or 7 votes from them of Democrats who don't want to break the status quo, and I'll be okay. Well, let's see what actually happened. We know he got ousted, so we know that didn't work. But let's actually look at what happened here.
Boehner resigned from Congress before the House voted. So I guess the question being, what do Democrats do? Have they shown any of their cards at this point, Mike?
Right, and the irony here is because McCarthy relied on Democrats to keep the government open last week, the irony here is Democrats just emerged from a closed-door meeting of their own in the basement of the Capitol this morning, and they have come out with a unified front. They will not support McCarthy in this fight. You know, if some of them did, then they would counterbalance the votes against McCarthy and the votes we're about to see this afternoon. They're saying now that they're not going to do it. They're saying basically it's up to...
So his bet, right, if I waive it, they won't have time to get together. What happened? They got together and they all unanimously agreed in like a 20-minute meeting. 200 plus people agreed. Fuck that guy. He's on his own. We're tired of his ass talking shit and breaking his promises. Fuck him. Like, Let the Republicans.
You know
deal with
what? Maybe had he given them more time, he would have given some people a chance to be like, but are you sure it's a good idea to, with only 20 minutes, they all just jumped on board. It backfired.
it. Right. Well,
Saying.
what was really funny about that was after he kind of after they had that meeting and he kind of realized, oh, that's what's going on. He tried to stall the vacate vote till the end of the day with a bunch of nonsense in between. And while they was trying to stall and having all these other like non-issues brought up, right? House cleaning shit. He's running around to all the Democrats going, vote for me, vote for me, vote for me. They're all sitting there going, nope. Good luck. They were like, leave it to the Republicans. The Republicans can eat their own. We don't give a shit.
So what it honestly just makes me think, though, okay, so now he's been voted off the island, only he's still kind of on the island.
I think
he's just demoted. He's still on the island, but he's not in charge of the island, and everybody hates him. Is he just going to be eaten alive, to sort of pull the string on this weird metaphor I've started? Like, how on earth is he going to manage to do anything in here while he rides this thing out?
I think he basically, I think it's over, because what is he going to do? He goes back to California where he's from, and he barely, he won that district by a bit because it's a more conservative district, but it's like, that is so fucking embarrassing. How do you run against anybody? He's going to get primaried in a heartbeat and he'll be gone. I think he just finishes out his term and does the absolute minimum. And
I mean, I'm even just thinking about him finishing out this term. Like he's basically, that's even just like a nightmare. He's not going to be able to, like, he really doesn't have anybody whose team he's on or can be on. Like, he's the kid in dodgeball that's standing there at the end, or like, when you're like picking teams or whatever, like who's going to be on this side or who's going to be on that side. He's the kid that's standing there that nobody's picking,
right? And
yet he's still in the gym,
right? He's the kid with asthma that nobody wanted, right? But yep, nope. I don't know what he's going to do. I think it's cooked. I mean, it's all cooked, but
he's kind of sunk. I mean, he's sunk in a broader sense, not just the speaker position. Like, he alienated so many people that, like, he doesn't have any good way back in, even not in that high of a position.
Right. Well,
at all. He doesn't have a good way back in anywhere.
Right. Well, and the other thing was Matt Gaetz, who was the one who brought up the vote. Right. And was fundraising while they were doing the vote on this vote. Right. I mean, it burns them down to where it's like, what do they do now? I mean, they're talking about, well, who's going to be the next speaker? They really don't have anybody that could do it. And then somebody's bringing up, well, maybe Trump. And they're like, well, yeah, right. Like, what is Trump? Trump wouldn't do that. You know how many hours you have to work to do that fucking job? Trump's not going to do that job. But they might have to do a situation where if they can't get the votes and everything and get a speaker up, they might have to elect a Democratic speaker. And a Democratic speaker in a Republican majority House, that would be weird. That would be unprecedented. I mean, we're in literally what's going to happen next. Nobody fucking knows. We are literally beyond the looking glass here. Up is down, north is south. Nothing makes sense.
I can't imagine a world where they would put a Democrat in that position, though.
They might have to if they can't get a Republican in there. If they go weak,
how would they fail a Republican in there? How is it? Okay, paint me the picture where that becomes a failure.
Because they're divided right now. So most of the party hates Matt Gaetz. So Matt Gaetz' political career is over for doing this. Kevin McCarthy's political career is over because of this happened to him, because he's so weak and feckless, right? Who else are they going to throw up there? Marjorie Taylor Greene, Jim Jordan? I mean, who do they got? And anybody they pick, the pie.
Regardless of whoever they throw up there, you would just think just so the Democrats weren't in any sort of power position, they would just let it happen.
They might, but that's going to be really difficult to pull together because anybody you put up there, half of them are going to hate him or her, right? If you put up a standard tax cuts, Republican, older school kind of Republican, like a Mitt Romney kind of character. So you put somebody like that up there, all the MAGA people are going to say he's a rhino. We can't vote for him because then they have to go back to their base. And if they vote for a guy who's a rhino, right, Republican in name only, then they're going to have to say, well, this guy doesn't believe in the Jewish space lasers and doesn't believe that the election was rigged and you voted for him. So they'll lose votes. If they try to put up a MAGA, a far-right MAGA person, right, then the regular squares that are from California and New York, those Republicans that got elected in conservative districts, but in very blue states, they need some Democratic voters. Otherwise, they can't win. Right? So they can't go in there and say...
political suicide for them to go in that far over.
Right. So if I vote for Jim Jordan...
That's true. A Republican from New York,
Yeah, but you voted for Jim Jordan. So no, you're a fucking nut. Like, we're going to go for the guy that's primarying you. And hopefully he's more reasonable.
Right.
So they're kind of in that position where they might not be able to get anybody. And if that's the case, then they can't get a majority. The Democrats now have, because they'll be split into two divisions, the Democrats now have all the votes that could actually count. So all you really need is to get 5 Republicans to vote with the Democrats, and you can have your own speaker. So if you get 5 Republicans to vote for a Democratic speaker, because it's just a clusterfuck, you might get 5 of those guys from New York or California or Washington or Oregon that might go, you know what? I can swallow this guy. I can at least sell that to my constituency. And now we have a speaker. I mean, like I said, we're through the looking glass. That's very possible now.
God, that's so weird to think about.
I know, isn't it?
I mean, it feels like this is one of those weird outer space, like that really weird Star Trek episode,
right.
Situation.
Yeah, that would be like, yeah.
Like, what do you mean the Klingons are friends with the, wait, what?
Well, that was that, I remember that was a Star Trek The Next Generation came out, and the tactical officer was a Klingon, Worf. And and all the Star Trek fans, like my parents, were watching it going, we're aligned with the Klingons now?
Right. I mean, okay, I really want to print my own T-shirt that says Team Worf because I was so into that character. Still am, just saying.
God, yeah.
But you see what my point is. Like, after, seeing original series, you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Wait, how did...
Yeah.
But I thought we don't like, but the...
Right.
It just becomes a big,
yeah,
moment.
Like I said, up is down, left is right. Dogs and cats are playing with each other. Total pandemonium.
Suddenly we're friends with the Klingons, right?
Like,
who knew?
Yeah. It's like Alien and Predator got together to do a good morning talk show.
Right.
It's just the weirdest thing. But I like to see them infighting. Like I always say, if I'm watching the Nature Channel and it's a couple cougars ripping apart a gazelle or a deer, I'm kind of like, nah. But if it's a spider and a centipede going on it, man, I'm all for it. I'm betting on that one. I'm watching that episode.
That's the battle. That's the battle you're in for.
That's the battle I want to see. Oh man. Well, anyway, so McCarthy's gone. That was the news, and we'll see what happens to the world. It'll still be here, but geez, it's just
it might. But it has gotten a little bit weirder. I feel like every week when I introduce the show, I say, "My God, what's happening in the news? It's so weird." And I feel like that's not supposed to be a tagline,
right?
But every week, what's happening in the news is so weird that I find myself being like, I can't wait to talk about the news. It's super weird this week.
I know. It's just crazy, crazy, crazy. And everybody's like, remember when it was more normal? And I'm like, no, you know what? It's always been like this. We just have social media and stuff now, so we're aware of everything that's going on. Right?
Some of the weirdness was a little hidden from us for a while, or
Right.
took long enough to get to us that it felt more spread out than it was, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when I was a cop and I used to read the summary reports every morning. It was part of my job. And so I'd read all the reports that the police filed in my district for the previous night, right? When I got into the office, or the previous weekend, or whatever it was. And you'd read them and you're like, how did this not make the news? How did this not make the news? And you realize then the newspaper would be a freaking novel if all these crimes made it, because some of them were hilarious. And you're like, that's a great story. You know, some were just like amazing. Anyway, speaking of amazing, I got a special clip for you. Your favorite person, Rachel Cruz. Okay, so we're back. We're going to go to a clip from Rachel Cruz on the Dave Ramsey Show.
See, you do this on purpose because you say her name and like there's this like little storm cloud inside of me that starts to happen.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure it's like my inner little feminist getting really like irritated.
Yeah. I like that there's a storm brewing inside of me. You know what that's from, right?
All right. Well, let's just see what Dave's little parrot prodigy child has to say to
the American people.
The American people, and knock all the power out of women, and yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
All right. So this video is titled "Why Do People Hate This Financial Advice?" That's what the title of this is. So let's see what financial advice they're talking about. So it's her and John Deloney.
Oh, your favorite.
Listen,
I mean, he's not your
studies.
No, he's not my favorite. Skippy's my favorite.
I know you love when you're right. So you are always.
I'm gonna just bask. Actually, you never said I was wrong though.
Oh no, this is more America.
That would have been better.
I watch you get beat up when we're doing live events and on the internet, social media about. You always tell everybody. We always tell everybody to get joint checking accounts and bank accounts, and don't hide money from each other.
So there was this Instagram reel going around, and it was like, basically say something that no one would say out loud, and you like point and you put like a thing, and I put, when you get married, combine your money, including one checking account, and you would have thought, you would have thought that I was like, everyone out there I'd hate.
No,
like
you
would have
thought
I
you put
was
like
telling
invite your neighbor over for dude.
So that's what everybody hates. It's stupid. Who cares? I don't know. It just seems like it's between the couple, doesn't it? And the other thing I don't get, I don't get is, how is this financial advice? Do they make more money by joining accounts? Do they?
I mean, it's all kind of the same amount of money. It's kind of just more about how that you're choosing to organize and arrange it, so to speak, like what the logistical setup is of how they transact. And quite frankly, if you're sharing one bank account, there's much higher probability that you're going to screw it up.
No, that's probably true.
I mean, if you and I were sharing a checking account for something other than bills or something, and no, we share 0 bank accounts in any way, but say we did, and it was not just for like some sort of shared bill situation, but it's for just whatever other stuff too. Your lunch out, pair of pants, new sneakers, whatever. If you haven't told me about it before I'm debiting other things or whatever, like, you hope there's a whole lot of excess sitting there in that account, but there might not be, right? And no offense, but you want to have to like text or call somebody every time you like do it. I don't know.
Make a purchase, Could be one of those things we had somehow in a joint checking account. You called me to like, Duncan, where you at? Oh, I'm in Vegas. You'd be running to the bank to try like, where's my money?
Oh no, that would not be good. Not be good at all. So I guess what somebody would say against what I just had to say is, but Alasius, that means they're going to be communicating more about their money. And isn't that a good thing? Well, sure, I guess, unless you get to a point where it's like, you're trying to do things on the same freaking day and you're like, wait, I got declined. What did you do? Well, like 20 minutes ago, I bought sneakers.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were going to try to go and buy whatever today, or,
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like a lot.
There's communication and then there's too much communication. Anyway, but she said she's right. She's been proven right. So let's see what proved her right.
You got a lot of heat for it.
It was like, hey, go drive to a red light, and whoever's next to you in the car, combine your checking. Everyone's like, you're so stupid. Like you would have thought that was my advice.
All right, so
all to say,
I gotta say, if I'm at a stoplight and somebody pulls up next to me and goes, combine your checking account, I'd be like, what the fuck is going on?
I'd be like,
that's a weird analogy she just gave.
What is going on? Is somebody being like initiated into something? What's happening?
Right. Pizza Rat, 9/11 was an inside job. Okay. I'm rolling up my window now.
Gladstone, Garbinsky, Mogenliner, sorry that I just butchered your name, in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. This is the abstract. Ultimately, when couples decide to share their lives, they're simultaneously faced with a decision of how or whether to pool their finances. So this group of psychologists is doing a study to find out, does the way in which couples keep their money affect happiness in their relationship?
Okay, so it's not a finance thing. It's about personal happiness. So it's not so how is this? It's not financial advice, boys and girls. Financial advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we also just get to some actual technicalities here?
Yeah.
Okay. Disclaimer. Last time I checked, still wasn't a lawyer. But generally speaking, when you get married, legally, your money kind of already got joined, unless you did certain things to kind of separate things off, prenups, blah, 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 right? But when you get married, that kind of already got done for you. So what they're really talking about is really how you organize and do your day-to-day spending. Mm-hmm. Is what they're splitting the hairs about. And the way they say it almost sounds to a listener like they're suggesting that by keeping separate bank accounts somehow you have like separate ownership of money, and that's not necessarily true. It's just like how people are choosing to organize money.
Right. Well, but they're saying this is a happiness thing, right? The other thing I love too is we actually pulled up the study. It's not really a study; it's a study of studies, right? And
they studied studies, right?
Yeah,
because they didn't actually conduct them, right?
No, they didn't conduct any of these studies. These three professors, Gladstone, Garbinsky, and Mogilner. But he said it's in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. So he said these three psychologists are studying happiness compared to pooling accounts. Well, let's see. So the first professor, Joe Gladstone, what does he do? He's the marketing division at the Elite School of Business at the University of Colorado in Boulder. So he's a business professor, not a psychologist. How about the second one? Maybe that'll fix it. Emily Garbinsky. What does she do? South Carolina, Johnson College of Business, Cornell. So she's a business professor. Not a psychologist. Let's look at the third professor, Casey Mogilner. Anderson School of Management, UCLA. It's the business school. So these are three business professors looking at this. They're not psychologists, so they don't. I mean, so already he's
looking at some sort of behavioral, thing and a tie to happiness, yada yada.
Yeah, well, I think when I read this. It's not very long, but we'll get to the end. They're looking at something different from what he thinks. They're not looking at, does it really tie to happiness? I mean, they're sort of comparing it, but they're looking at something completely different. But I still love the fact that he thinks it's 3 psychologists. This guy, Deloney, has 2 PhDs. You think he would be a little bit more on top of this shit. Because it's the very top of the paper, tells you the professors and where they work.
Now, I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I was just having a thought. So these guys didn't conduct these studies, from what I understand. They didn't conduct them.
Yeah.
They looked at studies that had already been done of various kinds.
And compared them. Yeah.
So now, perhaps I'm not an expert here, but I'm a teacher, and I'm thinking about when I have to sort of pool data from assessments that I've done.
Right.
It's really difficult to pool data from assessments that were conducted in different ways with different questions.
Right, because then it's not consistent.
It's not totally consistent. There could be some overlaps, and you might be able to find some correlations a little bit, but
right,
if the questions are different and it's conducted in a different way,
right,
it kind of makes the data a little bit more difficult to like directly. You can't totally just pool it together. Is kind of what I'm saying.
Right.
And so if they were looking at how many of them was 5 or 6 or something, how many studies was it in the
6?
6. So if I gave 6 completely different exams to different groups of students,
yeah,
and they were conducted in different ways,
you can't grade them all the same way. Yeah.
And they're graded in different.
Yeah.
I couldn't just give a presentation saying that of the whole sum of all of those students, XYZ, and say in this definitive way, because there would be all the variations.
60% of the students were happier, and it's well, yeah, but was it one more than the other? I mean, you're not parsing it out, right? So
right, okay, but in this one group of students, you fed all of them pizza and soda while they were doing the study, and they're yeah, I'm happy, that's great, right? So.
But
and this other group of students, something else, right? So the manner in which you do this is going to totally change it.
Right. Well, but you were right. So when professors do these kinds of studies, because they're trying to publish all the time, so these are kind of semi throwaway studies that they'll do. But what it does is it gives you, okay, if I look at 6 different studies, kind of compare them, and I sort of see a trend. Now I have a better idea of how to conduct my own study to see if my hypothesis is true.
Sure.
Because I looked at this and it looks like my hypothesis might be true. I looked at these 6 studies combined. So now I'm in a better position to develop a hypothesis and develop my own study. It's just the first step. This is even before hypothesis.
Right, but it kind of seems like the Ramsey Network wants to kind of look at this whole thing and say this study of studies doesn't just set them up to be able to maybe create a more all-encompassing study or something that's a little more specific to what they're looking at, right? They want to look at it and say, oh, when these guys looked at that, they definitively were able to tell you the meaning of life, or how the dinosaurs got extinct or something from it, when they're we basically just found some overlap so we could do another study.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to the conclusion of the study, because it's not what you think it is. But anyway, once again, he's already fucked it up. It's not psychologists. It's business professors who are looking at this.
So I have a question for you, Duncan.
Yeah.
You think they read this study, huh?
Oh, I don't know that they read this. They never read.
I know.
They never read.
I know, that's why he said it. They never read anything.
No, they never read. Why won't they read? It bothers me so much. Just read. That way.
So they took the Rachel Cruz
as many degrees as he has.
Yeah, you think he'd read it first. Well, they have 1,000 people working at that company. Somebody couldn't read it for him and give him the Cliff Notes. I mean,
right, just a bullet point version of it that's pretty clear.
Hey, John, just so you don't look like an asshole on the air.
Ramseyism and said, we're going to put it to the empirical test. Now, they did 6 different studies. Now, I haven't read the methodology here, but so this is just the abstract.
They didn't do 6 studies. They took 6 studies and compared them. It's such a fucking...
Their sample size was almost 40,000 people, including primary and secondary.
The combined sample size of all 6 studies was over 40,000. This is like shit like you really don't want to fuck up if you're a professor or if you're a PhD like he is. And yet he's
Right.
he's just so
Right.
Which in your world,
That's a lot, right? That's a lot. So again, I haven't looked at the methodology, but here's what they came across. Across 6 studies, about 40,000 people, that couples who pool all of their money compared to couples who keep all or some of their money separate experience greater relationship satisfaction and are less likely to break up. Joining bank account, though it benefits all couples, the effect is particularly strong among couples with scarce financial resources. So
so 2 things when you called it. He just said, I didn't read it.
You know what? I'd like to tell you that is just the manifestation of my psychic abilities.
They never read.
But I think we've discovered before that they just generally don't read.
We actually thought about doing an entirely separate segment on this show. We discussed this before called Dave Ramsey and his crew don't read. And that's just to watch, just to have, because they do a ton of these and they never read the article. The article always says something different.
So I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like we set this segment up incorrectly. Had I realized I was gonna say the thing about them not reading, because I've got a crystal for that.
There you go.
I totally should have had a crystal ball here and been like, hold on.
Are they gonna read?
Seeing something.
They didn't read the study.
They didn't read the study. Yeah.
They didn't do the homework. All right.
Opportunity missed, man. All right.
All right.
Anyway.
So real quick, so I'll just read a couple of these studies just to give you a sense of how fucked this is. So study number 1. Okay, so we conducted this study at a busy intersection at a Midwest college campus the weekend of a football game that attracts thousands of university alumni. We set up a table with a sign inviting those in committed romantic relationships to participate. We got 148 people. So that's already an outlier right there. Study 1. Study 2 conducted a survey among married Americans on Amazon's Mechanical Turk. Following recommended recruitment procedures, we used an unpaid pre-screened survey that included a relationship status question. So self-fulfilled prophecy on that one. Because there's people are filling out whatever they want online.
Right.
So you don't know who's telling the truth and who isn't. The third one, the big one, was about 40,000. So the rest of these are all pretty small. But the third one was the big one. Okay. This is in the UK. We relied on data from Understanding Society, a nationally representative panel survey. 40,000 UK households. The survey began in 2009. The data continued to be collected. To present day, participants completed an annual survey, which includes questions measuring relationship satisfaction, account pooling, and other relevant measures. So they took a survey that they'd been given to these couples. Now, the interesting thing about the third one is this, because he didn't read the methodology and he didn't read the contributions or the conclusions or anything like that. The third one, the big one, what they found was this. So couples who were satisfied, reported being satisfied, more often pooled their money than couples that reported being unsatisfied, right? But couples who, because they've been taking this survey for over a decade, couples who were satisfied at one point and then became unsatisfied later did not pool their money. So they were pooling their money when they were satisfied, and then later when they were not satisfied in the marriage, they had separate accounts, and vice versa.
Well, do we actually need a study for that? I'm sorry,
I know.
Sorry, I'm laughing my ass off here, but okay. So hold on. No, you always do the let's break this down. I think we need Alicia's to break this.
Break it down, baby.
Because breaking it down. So you mean to tell me the earth-shattering information we've gotten from pooling all 6 studies that the Ramsey Network is just like selling like freaking hotcakes is that when people are happy, they're comfortable sharing their money. And when they stop being happy, they kind of want their money separate because they sort of feel a little weird about how things are going.
Right. Or they don't trust each other or whatever.
So the earth-shattering news is that when people like don't trust each other and kind of like don't like each other as much, they kind of don't want their money together.
Right. So they're trying to say if you pool your...
I am so glad they told me that.
Right. But that's the thing is he's missed the point was they're saying there's a correlation between relationship happiness and whether or not the couple stays together if they pool their money. What they took that to mean was, oh, if you pool your money, you're more likely to be happier and stay together. When that's not what they discovered. They discovered it's probably the reverse. You're more likely to pool your money if you're already happy, which means you're already likely to stay together because you're happy.
Well, you know what? I'm sort of taking a little side road here, but I remember kind of right where you paused this clip here. They were saying something. They were trying to say something about, oh yeah, especially people in lower income brackets.
Right.
And I gotta say that bugs the crap out of me because if you're in a lower income bracket, you might be struggling, to make ends meet.
You have to pool your money.
You may be required to make sure all the money gets sort of put in one pile in order to satisfy some household needs.
Right.
There might not be enough excess for you to feel that you have the luxury to like have any separate buckets or piles of anything, So it feels a little bit like an unfair assessment, or once again, I feel like I'm always saying they're looking at this from this I don't know, standpoint of having the luxury of being able to do all of these things,
Right.
they're just assuming a lot.
Well, they're doing it from the standpoint of wealthy white Christian privilege.
Yes, exactly. Like they have this privilege. Yeah, let's use that word. They have this privilege that makes them just automatically assume that other people
It's the same.
could do. Yeah, exactly.
That it's comparable,
Exactly.
and it's not. It's not. We'll watch a little bit more of this, but yeah, it's ridiculous. They jump to conclusions all the time.
If you will put all of your money in the account and deal with all of the anxiety and all of the hard conversations and all of the push and pull that will entail, the data says you're less likely to break up and you are more likely to experience greater relationship satisfaction.
I can't believe that guy has a PhD.
Okay. Oh my God. I
Texas
have to
Tech
jump in here
needs
and
to,
find.
because it doesn't say that. It says there's a correlation between the two things. It doesn't say that if you pool your money, you're more likely to stay together and be happier. It doesn't say
I need
that.
to side note this. I need to side note this because this is going to drive me crazy. So this I'm going to call it this religious thing because I want to sort of like blame it as a Christian thing. This is sort of like general like religious sort of thing about pooling your money, and the first thing that pops in my head is risk. And I'm not meaning risk in like the technical finance sense. I mean like feeling like you're doing risky behaviors. I mean behavioral risk, right? So for it's only really like in recent years that women even had the ability to control their own money at all, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like your husband, you could have your own freaking bank account, and your husband could just go and like take all your money out, even if he wasn't on it. You couldn't control your own money. So they're wanting to like sing this kumbaya and hold hands and like you pull your money and that means people are happier and whatever. Are they all happier? I don't want to be doom and gloom about like all of people's relationships because some people really have wonderful, happy relationships. But you know what? Some people that are in risky situations that don't have access to any of their money on their own would not be willing to say that things weren't okay because they feel like they're already at risk.
Right. Well, and then the other
I don't have access to any of my own money. Things are not okay. They're not good. And you want me to go and like say, oh yeah, I need my money separate. Things aren't okay. Like, no.
Yeah. Well, especially it depends on the relationship. And I would say that, yeah, you probably should talk about the finances and all that and come to an agreement on stuff. But it's one of those things too where it depends on the couple, right? I mean, I've had bad relationships. I would not feel comfortable with all my money in the same account with somebody else. Because how do I know that?
No, nor would I.
Yeah, how would I know that they're not, if they're cheating on me, or they decide they want to go somewhere else and they just siphon all my money out and run?
I have had clients that have had that happen to them. They were married
more often than you think.
And they looked over and
boom, yep.
The one partner drained all this money out of the account, and then they went through a divorce, and
you got to sue them and then try to get it back, and it's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but even if you do and you win, you still
no, you still don't get
it. If it's gone, if it's gone, no matter how that goes, you might not be actually recovering the money.
Right. They put it in cash and hide it. There's no way,
right.
You're going to find it. I mean, so yeah. But anyway, let's just jump to the conclusion here, because this is just ridiculous. He can't even read. Once again, they always jump to the conclusion they want. And that's the problem, is they start with the conclusion they want, and then they try to fit the evidence in, and it never works. It's like watching the slow kid try to bang the square peg into the round hole. It's like, no, buddy, put it in the square hole. So anyway, we'll just do this conclusion real quick. I'll just read it. So can you see that well enough, or is that too?
No, it's too little. You gotta load that baby up.
Let's see. How do I?
I don't know how you do it on the screen. There it is. There's the button.
I can do it on there.
A little bit more. Can I get a little more?
A little bit more? Do it on the
a tiny bit more.
Is that better?
All right. That's all right. Yeah.
So we're just going to read concluding remarks. The decision of how to pool finances was one that every couple must make, guided by interdependence theory, which I guess was the theory they were using. We hypothesized and showed that pooling finances versus keeping accounts separate is associated with, doesn't cause, but is associated with increased relationship satisfaction and longevity. So it doesn't cause it, it's associated. They're linked, but they're not, one doesn't necessarily cause the other. Especially for those...
There's a correlation, not causation, different.
Right. Especially for those who experience their financial resources as scarce, meaning people with little money tend to be a lot more likely to pool and stay together. It is our hope that by identifying who is likely to benefit most from pooling finances and why, research in this area can help couples both decide how to organize their finances to maximize relationship quality and ultimately improve their well-being. So they weren't doing this study to prove pooling finances makes your relationship better. They were pooling to say, hey, what does pooling it do versus not do? And what does that show us? And then that will give you, as somebody who's advising a client, a better idea of what to tell them. Because if you have a client who's in a relationship that's not going super well, you're probably not going to want to sit there and tell them, you know what, you and your wife should put all your money together and that'll fix your relationship. That's probably bad advice.
Right.
Well, but I think my wife's cheating on me and she's going to leave me. Well, I'll tell you what, give her access to all your money and I'm sure that'll work out great.
Right?
No, she's going to steal all your money and go off with the other guy. I mean, vice versa, right? The husbands do that shit all the time too. They control all the money and they just take it with them. I'm not giving her anything.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like, it's chicken or egg. I don't think that pooling assets makes your relationship better. Now, you could potentially make that argument, but I think that'd be hard to show. I think it's more likely that if your relationship's going really well, you're more apt to want to pool money. If your relationship's not going well, you're more apt to want to separate money. The other thing too is in the big study they did, it was really confusing because the questionnaire had the question, do we totally keep our money separate or do we pool our assets? There's no other third choice. It's just those two. So totally separate versus pooling assets. Well, totally separate means we all have different accounts. Pooling assets could mean I have my account, Lacey's got her account, and then we have an account that we throw money in every month to pay the bills.
Right. So this kind of goes back to my,
right,
comparing it to teacher assessments. How you ask the question makes a difference.
and it changes the result.
And it changes the results. Not only, I was talking about that in terms of pooling things, but if you ask, in your household, do you and your partner pool money, or do you keep all of it separate?
Right.
I can go, oh, well, it's not all separate. We have a joint account. So yeah, we pool our money, right? But actually you are keeping some money separate. So it's both. Not fully accurate, but the way you ask the question,
right.
I gave you one answer instead of saying both.
Right.
But
it's a bad,
yeah, makes a difference.
Yeah. But you got to remember, it's the Dave Ramsey mindset. It's their whole mindset. It's the conservative mindset is no matter how much the results change, the conclusion stays the same. That's science, Lacey. That's how science works.
Yeah, my humanities brain just couldn't figure that out.
Oh, God. Anyway, I don't know if you wanted to say anything more about that. I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, my last word is organize your money the way you and your partner can handle organizing your money. Yeah. If you want to have it all in one place because that feels like the best way for you to manage it, do it that way. If you need your Mad Money accounts to be separate, so when your spouse buys a pair of sneakers when you're about to do whatever, things don't go kaplooey on you, do that.
Right. I agree.
There you go.
I agree. Just have the conversation. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Have the conversation and organize it according to the way you all behave with money and the way you can organize your money.
Right.
Period.
Well, cool. Well, that was our show for the day. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Lacey. Good work today. Where can everybody find you?
As always, you can catch me at mysensewithsense.com for articles I've written, information about courses and workshops. If you have questions about any of those things, you're welcome to email us or please send us some clips. I loved the last one somebody sent us where they were like, maybe you guys will agree. And we agreed a little. That was kind of fun. Yeah, a little bit. We didn't totally disagree, and we'll put that in the sort of column. Anyway, send us some. We love that stuff, or topic requests, or invite yourself on here to have a conversation with us, or disagree with us if you want to. And Duncan, how should they do that?
Yeah, you can do that. Just email us at gossipfinancead@outlook.com. It should be down below in the description. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. We'll catch you next time.